Hello guys, it's Christy. Happy Sunday wherever and whenever it is you are. I'm gonna be honest guys, I don't think I'm gonna do a 2-hour show today. I'm pretty tired. It's been, well, it's actually been a 4-day weekend, and I've been using the time to really relax because work has been stressful lately. And yeah, so I'm gonna go for, my aim is for an hour. That's about it. We'll be back, I would assume, to a 2-hour show next week, but it's been a crazy couple days. So before I start off talking a little bit about, I'm probably not going to talk about the Mueller Report too much either, because that's a whole big topic. Like, it's a really big issue as to impeachment and everything else. But I wanted to do a little shout out to keep you guys up to date with what is happening in the hip hop world. As you know, I'm becoming a more and more of a fan of hip hop. And I also talk to the chat a lot, but let me go ahead and change my screen here away from the cute puppets. I found some more cute videos, so I'm going to redo the video that you're seeing now, this one over here. Add some more cute dog pictures. There's someone who's got a pug, and he's giving it a little facial massage, and the dog is just like, ah, and it's so... Anyway, let me transition here. Tech9 has a new album out that if you guys have access to Spotify or whatever else, I'd highly recommend it. His flow, his rhyming, way he does stuff, oh my gosh. And there's a great song as well called Like I Ain't, which I think is a 4th song. It depends on how you count songs, if you count like the intros and things. But yeah, go out and check Tech9. It's spelled Tech and then 9 with a 9 in it. The album's called Nina because that's also like his working name. Like, the people also call him Nina. So you can also check out more of his stuff. I will be actually tonight at the concert for Token, who did a song with Tech9 on his last album, Somewhere in Between. And I'm very much looking forward to that tonight. It's another reason, like, I just like want to have a chill day before I go to the concert. And then tomorrow is Bank Holiday Monday. And on Bank Holiday Monday, I will also have off, which would be so lovely. And then Tuesday, I'm flying to London, and then I'm in London till May Day. But you guys don't really care about that. I don't care about my schedule so much. All right, so let me go back. I'm going to swap to just the 2-camera shot because I don't have really anything pictures prepped before I start discussing a little bit more about the Karl Benjamin thing, because I do think that it's an important part of political activism to stand up to and speak out against candidates that we think are really harmful. And I want to just talk about that because it's been on my mind. It's been in the news a lot lately, and it's taken up a lot of my mental space. So rather than trying to come up with something else for this show, I've just decided to kind of discuss this a little bit more in depth and some things. So let's see who we got here in the chat. We've got Shalisa. Is that how you say it, or is it Shalise? Eva is in there. Hello, how you doing? 250 in the house with 2 pigeons fighting outside your window. James, Mithril, Mike, hello everyone. Cognitive Society, hello. Good to see you. Data Port Doll, hello. Oh, this is going to really be like familiar names. A real group of people who come together every Sunday, for which I'm very, very grateful. So thanks you guys for that. And yeah, definitely watch the Cognitive Society's video on whatever it is that they've put up. So, hey, everyone. Yeah, alright, so the Mueller Report came out, again, I don't really, I want to talk about it, but at the same time, I guess you guys didn't see your chat in there, but I saw your chat, and I can see your chat, even if you're looking at the dog. It's okay. Yeah, so the Mueller Report said it gave us more clarity in terms of background information. There are more details out now. There's more criminal behavior. Oh yeah. I'll get to that too. I might as well. Thanks. The Cognitive Society, the Peterson versus GShock thing. I don't know if you're talking about my thread, but I'll try to remember to talk about that. It didn't tell us anything we didn't know. I mean, there's nothing. It was more like details being revealed rather than a different story or somehow very different reality to what we had perceived. We have a criminal president. We have a tyrant in the White House. I'm not entirely sure, kind of like, maybe everyone has their own realization of when that line is crossed. But for me, I'm going to turn my volume up a little bit, guys. I don't think I'm quite loud enough. I'm a little soft-spoken today. Is that better? Now I'm going to clear my throat in your ear. Anyway, it didn't say anything we didn't already know, and so in some ways it was a big thing, but it wasn't a shock. And because we're so now accustomed to Trump being criminal, it's kind of, we sort of almost discount his criminality now. At least I think that's kind of what happens. We expect the president to lie. We expect the president to say things that we know are empirically false. And the media, remember when Trump first got elected and they were super hesitant to use the word lie and falsehood and like, oh, we've got to be really careful. That's all gone now. But I guess to me, here's what I think we're at the stage of now. Politicians, Democratic politicians, Republicans I can't really fathom because they sometimes act in ways that I think are insane. But Democratic politicians anyway, let's just assume that they're like a thermometer. They're like a thermometer that you put into the temperature of their constituency. And as the constituency opinions change in relation to media events, because this is the thing, public opinion it's a moving thing, and it's dynamic, and it could change at any time. A typical politician will want to have a sense of what that public mood is, and they will not. And they're also, it's like force of least resistance. Like, what do they have to do to make sure that they get voted in by the widest number of people in their own constituency in every election? So the Democrats, when they talk about impeachment or not proceeding with impeachment, I take that to be that they look not at AOC's Ocasio-Cortez's constituency. Nancy Pelosi does not look at her San Francisco constituency when she is thinking about impeachment. She is looking at Iowa. She is looking at Ohio. She is looking at Missouri. Because when Democrats win in these wave elections, they don't win in blue areas. They win in purple areas, even tinged red, So their thinking is that, and this is true, most people in America care more about their health care than the quality of our government. It's just the case that most voters aren't going to be motivated by something like impeachment because even though there's a duty to it, it doesn't feel like it has an impact on their lives. And when it comes down to it, people want politicians to talk to them about their problems. So Democrats need to run on healthcare. And I think that there's a fear that if there's an impeachment hearing, that will be all that's discussed, rather than healthcare, which is what Democrats won on in 2018, and it's what they will win on in 2020. It's not going to be impeachment. It's not going to be the Climate Change Act. It's not going to be whatever else. It's going to be healthcare. Healthcare, because that's a pocketbook issue for Americans, and it costs them money, and so they care about it, they pay attention to it. Whether or not there's a fascist in the White House, less important in terms of how people are going to respond to the election campaign. So, if we as more progressive Democrats want the leadership to stand up, to start moving forward on impeachment, we can't just yell at them. We have to, I think, make the case that there is a desire in the population for some accountability. And it can't just come from San Francisco. It can't just come from New York City or Madison, Wisconsin, or Austin, Texas. What we need is something like a resistance levels of marching. We need the Women's March, but for impeachment hearings or proceedings. And I think that that's the next direction. If we really want to guarantee that Trump is held to account during this current term, then it might take marching in the streets routinely and aiming our ire at Democratic leadership, not, again, just in Berkeley and just in New York City and just in Austin and Madison and other progressive places, but we need people turning out in Alaska, we need people turning out in Missouri. Right? I'm not going to go through Nancy Pelosi's stance on healthcare, guys. Come on, too fitty. You can go read that. What's what I would do? I would go and look it up on Google. So I'm not going to do that. I don't know everything. I'm not made of facts. Do you guys know that line from Hot Fuzz when they're chasing the guy and they finally reveal who he is? And he's like, oh, that's Danny's cousin's sister's brother. It's like, you knew him? I couldn't see his face. I'm not made of eyes. Alright, so that's my opinion on the Mueller report is it should produce impeachment charges. If the Democrats don't, I will be incredibly infuriated because I do think it's important that we hold him to account. Absolutely, we should hold him to account. I just realized that my camera situation here could be a little bit better. There is enough material. Trump's already an unindicted co-conspirator in another criminal event. Michael Cohen's already going to jail for what Donald Trump had him do. So how is that not, there, I fixed it. Why is that not high crimes and misdemeanors if he's already done something that someone else has been convicted for? And he was the person who directed it. So yeah, impeach individual one. But anyway, yeah, so that's that. I'll probably have a lot more to say on the Mueller report in future. But instead, I'll just go through now my most recent upload to my Karl channel. Okay, so let me share my screen here. My small, yeah, this will work. Oh, say goodbye to the puppies. They're so cute. Oh, look at that, how cute are the puppies. Oh, I want my dog care day, my dog daycare business. This is what I want. All right. So going to my channel that I started, well, I changed it was just a random backup channel because when I was getting targeted for harassment by Bering et al. And I decided to, there's a lot of stuff out there. People have been keeping track of Karl's ridiculous comments forever, but it would be nice to have a place where it would all be collected and also a name that's quite findable. But I didn't want to get in any trouble for trying to impersonate him. I didn't want to put up his picture or put up his real name, like put up his actual name, so it would be competing in the search bar. I've left it as a green dot and a misspelled name on purpose. Sorry, I love, this is one of my other favorite coffee cups. I got it in Barcelona a couple years ago when I went to see the Gaudi Cathedral on the outside for the first time. I was at a conference. I didn't have enough time to stay there. And go inside that day, it was just too many people. It was too long of a wait, and I didn't have enough time to properly enjoy it. So I went to the gift shop, and in the gift shop, they had this mug, which I love the shape of. It's like, do it over here, do it under, where do I do it? Here we go. You can just rest your hand very easily. It's very ergonomically well designed in terms of resting in your hand, and it's very, very comfortable. Now, the only downside of it is that it only holds like a cup of coffee, which is about half as much as I like in my mugs. So as much as I like this mug, I have to have a side supply of basically a thermos of coffee to top up. I figured if I'm only doing a 1 hour show, I'm not going to stop and make a fresh cup of coffee. So, all right, random tangent. Before I go on and explain a bit more on the channel, I'll just check the chat a little bit, see what you guys are saying. How about the Democrats that do something with healthcare instead? Well, Mike, the Democrats can't do anything about healthcare when they didn't control either house of Congress, or the presidency. So you can't really blame people for not getting things done when they literally don't have the ability to get anything done. They were in the minority for a long time, and now they're in a divided house. And reasonably, the only time we got healthcare, a lot of presidents have tried healthcare. The only time we ever got healthcare was when the Democrats controlled the Senate, the House, and the White House. And that's what it's going to take again. So, yeah, don't hate the player, hate the game, Mike, is my one on that. Would Trump be prosecutable once he leaves office? Oh, yeah, definitely. Once he leaves office, the protections of the presidency leave him because he no longer has that sort of justification that, right. If you watch, so this is from Rachel Maddow. She explains this, I think, in her series Bagman, but she's also described it on her show. Spiro Agnew, under the Nixon administration, was under investigation for criminal activities, and they wanted to know if they could proceed with prosecution. And the DOJ had to kind of look at the Constitution and the rules of it and the intentions, and they came up with this rule. Now, it's not law, it's not Constitution that the president can't be indicted. A state could try indicting Trump during his presidency to challenge that. But currently, DOJ rules, the way that they developed them was they said, okay, well, does the vice president have the same sort of constitutional protections as the president? And they wrote the law saying, look, the vice president doesn't have the commander-in-chief abilities and yada, yada, yada. So while it would be, a nuisance or an interference if the president was constantly being indicted for political reasons, and that's why we protect the president from indictment, because there is already the impeachment process if the president has committed high crimes and misdemeanors, it is therefore okay to indict a sitting vice president. So the point of the DOJ rules as they were written during the Nixon administration wasn't to protect Nixon or to write a justification for the protection of not indicting the sitting president. It was to write a justification for the ability to indict a sitting vice president. And that's where the rule comes from. And that being said, if the state of New York wanted to try it on and go to the Supreme Court and have a big fight, they could. It's just a rule. It's not a constitutional block, as it were. But as soon as Trump, the day after he left office, they could be waiting for him, as he walked out of the White House with handcuffs. Absolutely. So I just have to clear my throat here, so I'm going to pause. Thank you. Right. You want to convince the Democrats that there is popular support for impeachment? Yes, that's correct. Karl should write you a thank you note for being nice and not trying to compete with him in search engines. Yeah. Coffee cups with Christy. Yeah, we should go through my collection of coffee mugs, because I do adore, I collect coffee mugs when I travel places because it's better for me than a postcard. Although I do have postcards up for when I travel. I've got them sort of just put all over my kitchen as an ongoing sort of board of a collection of postcards. But because I use coffee mugs all the time, then it's really nice and easy for me to get a souvenir coffee mug that's I like and it will always remind me of the place. So yeah, coffee cups with Christy. Definitely true. Democrats, the most wishy-washy things when they have control and never take bold and useful actions or stances. Well, again, you're looking at divided government, Mike. When you work in the UK, you have basically an elected dictatorship for up to 5 years. And when you have one-party rule, not a confidence supply or a coalition, but when you have what's traditionally been the case, a conservative-led government or a labor-led government, there is basically very few options people have to stop the legislation that the government wants to put through. And of course, you can get bold ideas, rather, and useful, in different stances. But can I just point to the problem with that? Look at the way that every single government reorganizes the education system. And the nightmare of complications, different levels of degree, constantly changing curriculum and metrics and goals that teachers in Britain have to deal with. Right? Well, that's because every government wants to reinvent education. So every 5 years, you guys basically have some new policy, new degree. It's a nightmare in terms of trying to track it as a social scientist. You can't get that in America. You can't blame Democrats for not being bold when the system prevents them from being bold. It's checks and balances. It's divided government. So lower your expectations. Is what, again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Where is all this hate coming from Democrats? I mean, if they were running things for 20, 50 years, then yeah, I think you're in a position to criticize them. But don't criticize them when they don't have the power to do what you're asking them to do, or for not being bold when the system prevents it by demanding compromise and splitting power up. So reasonable expectations, I think, have to be calculated. Supply side of one coffee will power for approximately 60 minutes. That's true. Right. Thomas Smith wants Democrats to run on making Trump face justice. I think that would be a good idea in places like California. I think that message would work well in basically the blue states to get the base riled up. But we would have to customize our message in the heartland, in the rural areas. In Kentucky, voters in Kentucky don't really care about Democrats' desire to impeach Trump. What they do care about is the fact that healthcare centers around the state are closing. that, they want to be able to get access to, use Obamacare, get on Medicaid. They care about their day-to-day health things. They don't really care about the higher, loftier things. So I think it's fine to have a tailored message. America is a big country. It's huge. Media markets are very separate. If you have something playing in a California media market, it will not be picked up in Missouri. There's no sort of that way. So I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. The gnome prank, yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that's fine. According to MSNBC, there's a statute of limitations on Trump's crimes of interfering with the investigations into collusion. That's true. However, the statute of limitations on interfering comes into effect in 2021. Yeah, New York State has got plenty of charges up against Trump already. And I'm sure they're going to have more once they release his taxes. So his foundation's already under investigation. His campaign finances are under investigation. His administration is under investigation. His foundation has already been shut down. So I think, look, Trump's legal problems will not end because he leaves office. In fact, in a lot of ways, he has a real motivation to stay in office, to try to get 4 more years to try to undermine our legal system and our justice system to avoid being indicted when he gets out of office, after a second term. And then, of course, he might try to run one of his family members who could pardon him if he can't pardon himself. I mean, the guy is this. We're no longer talking about a democracy in my country, as far as I'm concerned. We're run by a tyrant with collaborating Republicans, and we have a small resistance movement in the form of the Democratic Party. All right. I was just thinking to myself, is it about a half hour? It feels like we've been going halfway through the show, and yeah, it's like 22 after. All right, I want to talk a little bit about why I think it's super important to stand up to Karl Benjamin. Shall we start at the beginning, guys? We had, earlier in the week, the UKIP party announcement. I guess we could probably do some show and tell and get some of that out here. Maybe not play it too loud, but Karl Benjamin. Oh yeah, I'll go here. There's actually been a couple articles too that I can shout out as well. Oh man, this press he's getting, and Karl thinks all press is good press. What? That's not true. It's just not true that all press is good press. We have here. We just let that run. I don't think that will be. Yeah, there's no problem with the desktop audio there interfering. I can see it at the bottom. Right. What I want to say is, when this has come up now, with Karl running for office, I might switch which screen I'm on here. I know that from my side, yeah, that's better. I already have been told many times that I'm obsessed, I can't get over him, all this sort of thing. And it's a really common tactic to discredit women, especially, is to take their complaints, whether it's sexual harassment, sexual abuse, inappropriate behavior, and turn, and for men in particular, to make the woman what she's objecting to, a question of her sanity, a question of her motives, in order to take the focus away from what she's criticizing and put it onto her and make her look untrustworthy. And this is something that, Karl's fans, and Karl does a lot, because by attacking me and my motives for, in basically just documenting what he's put up and what he's said publicly, they're trying to take attention away from the horrible things that he's said. It is important that, I think, that people are held to account for what they say. One of Karl's defenses in this whole process is, this is a 3-year-old tweet. Well, if you committed murder 3 years ago, people aren't going to say, oh, well, that was 3 years ago, we're not going to prosecute it. I'm not comparing what he did to murder. What I'm saying is that when you do something awful and you don't apologize for it, you don't acknowledge it, you don't understand why what you did was hurtful to people and why you should avoid doing it in future, it's still a problem. Until there is justice, we can't really move on. what Karl wants and what Karl is used to, what world Karl has built for himself, is to surround himself with people who praise him, who support him, who defend him, and he'll say something and he'll get applauded for it, he'll get praised for it, and then he'll move on like it just doesn't matter anymore. Like somehow what he said has had its moment, and now he goes on to the next one. He wants all the benefits of free speech. He wants to explore and push the limits of free speech, but he absolutely just rejects the concept of being held accountable for what he said and the harm that his language does. Instead, he makes it about himself and his rights, and it's all about him. When he went, have you ever seen a politician go to a press conference and refuse to answer questions? To get up there and not talk about the people that you want to represent? To not mention the concerns that motivated you to put your name forward because you want to say things for people that you don't feel are being said, even though there's a UKIP, I think, representative for that position, the seat that he's running for right now. And with all the self-obsession, Karl can't point to being motivated by other people's concerns to justify his behavior, which is why when he gets critiqued, it's just a critique of him. There's nothing in this that is a critique of UKIP's policies. Really, there's nothing in here about the voting record of UKIP. There's nothing in here about Karl's planned legislation. The entire issue of his candidacy is himself. And because he doesn't have real issues, because he doesn't get up in public and talk about policy, he gets up in public and talks about himself. He is the issue. You are the issue, Karl. You've made yourself the issue. And if you are the issue, then we have a lot of issues with you. And this is part of the reason, this channel over here, which direction? This direction. Here is a list of the problems we have with you. I got a lot of problems with you people, as it were. And it goes back forever, it goes back for as long as we have record of you having a channel. You've been saying terrible things. So if the whole purpose of this exercise is for you to get out there in the world and talk about yourself and promote your YouTube channel and promote your Patreon and promote your ideas, and you're not listening, you're talking, well, then let's talk about what you said. This is the other hypocrisy, and this is also very much the mentality of a bully. A bully wants a power situation where they can find a victim. That victim won't fight back. In fact, if you think about it, there's a really messed up praise that people will get. Oh yeah, you really took that punch well. Oh, you really took that beating. Or for people in the comments who don't block their comments, even though there's terrible things. Oh, I really admire the fact that you don't shut down your comments. You let all these horrible things be said to your face. That, to me, is a form of toxic masculinity. It's turning that suffering into a noble thing. That it's a badge of honor to be able to be humiliated and not resist. Why? Because that means the bully has, the victim almost participates in the bullying with this mentality. And if you stand up to the bully and you do shut it down, you won't take their bullshit, you will stand up for yourself, then they'll really hammer on you. Why? Because you're misbehaving. You're stopping the entertainment. You're not letting the person bully you. And this is how Karl operates. All the time. He wants to be able to say whatever he wants about Anita Sarkeesian and Jess Phillips and any other woman that he finds, having an independent opinion. He can say anything, but we can't say anything back. Any criticism we have back of them is obsessive. Right? So, if Karl had any morals and could be in a situation where he could give as good as he takes, that would be a thing. It wouldn't be necessarily better, but it would be different. However, the fact is he can't handle criticism. He can't take what he dishes out. When he yelled at Jess Phillips for laughing at male suicide, one, she didn't. She was laughing at the idea that somehow these issues weren't being brought up in the course of the Westminster parliamentary process. That men and men's issues, even though the body itself is like 80% men, weren't being dealt with. Men can represent men every day of the week. If they don't, then ask the men representatives, not the feminists who want, to bring attention to one day. But so Jess Phillips didn't say that thing, and Karl lied about it. Now he doesn't want any, pushback or questioning of what he said. And I'm glad Jess Phillips is pushing back and standing up to him, because he is a bully, and he wants silence and complicity, and not standing up, not drawing a line is how Karl's gotten to be the monster he is today. Because so far YouTube hasn't drawn a line, and people are now starting to draw lines. Patreon drew a line, Twitter drew a line, and what do we see? Well, Patreon, he couldn't get away with it, but on Twitter, he thinks the rules don't apply to him. Again, he doesn't have a sense of individual rights. He has a sense of individual entitlement. Coffee's really full, sorry. I dripped. I made it too full. Now I have coffee on my sweatpants. Someone's doing laundry later on today. So Karl is really an awful person at the end of the day, and he says terrible, awful things. We should hold him accountable. We should hold him to account for it, and that's pretty much what this channel is. I know Mike Suchberry got caught out circulating a video. I was also given that video, but it was edited to, it was really clipped up, and I had a lot of other unedited videos in the can. There's so much, you guys. There's so much on Karl. It's a lot of work to track it all and put it up. So I had not put up that clipped video, and I'm really glad I didn't know. I'm glad. I like to just, my preference anyway is for unedited clips, or if the clip is edited, that I do the edits so that I know exactly why I took something out. Like in this Richard Carrier bit, I could have maybe taken some of their back and forths that didn't have to do with the conversation, and done a little clip there and a fade or some sort of indication of a time passing. But then that raises the question, well, what did you cut out? So I tend to prefer unedited clips rather than edited ones. Or if I do have an edited clip, it would be like from Kevin's channel where I know it's where it came from, things like that. The one that I put up, is it 22 minutes? Oh yeah, maybe it's 22 minutes because I added an intro. But it seems that the Karl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad video on Elliot Rodger disappeared from his channel. Also, his video with all of the slurs, that might have gotten taken down because people noticed actually that it was filled with racist slurs and homophobic slurs or whatever else he put in there. Apparently that video was taken down for hate speech, but the Elliot Rodger one disappeared, and I managed to get a copy of it. Found a mirror. His fans mirror his stuff to spread his ideas. So this is the full feminist system and the defense of Elliot Rodger, the full video, and we got smaller clips too. And I'm putting this up here for the media because just listen to him. Karl said in his press conference, if you want to know what I believe, if you want to know what I stand for, you can go to my channel, and everything there is on my channel. Well, it's not just on his channel. He's made other public comments as well. And these are the ones that I think need to be addressed. It is not an obsession to criticize someone who's running for public office. The burden of slander. I'm not even slandering him. I'm just posting up things he's said himself that otherwise you'd have to watch for hours and hours and hours. So no, it's not obsession. It's basically, a part of the democratic process is having these debates around people you don't think should have political power. any political power. I think Karl should not ever hold political power. As long as he holds his kind of views that he holds today, he's unrepentant in his use of rape to menace women online, his refusal to understand, from an empathetic, compassionate point of view, why a society filled with men who would walk up to women and say, I wouldn't even rape you, is not a society we want to live in. As long as he has that kind of mentality, you're right. I will stand up and oppose that in government, because that's exactly the kind of wrong application of power to produce an equal society. And I will continue to criticize Karl for his past behavior until he does apologize, until he does recognize why he disgusts so many people. And I will certainly do what I can to help his political opponents make sure he never even comes close to holding a seat by using publicly available information. That's my power. That's my free speech. And I'm not going to stop using my free speech because Karl's fanboys, want to call me obsessed, to gaslight me, and use typical sexist ways of undermining women to avoid the conversation about the content of his statements. And yeah, we're gonna keep going on this, people. We're gonna keep putting things out. We're gonna keep bringing more attention and expanding the scope of awareness of the things he said. And now, in the first foray was the rape tweet, and that is a really good basis. I think I'm really, really happy, I would say, that the rape tweet focus has come up again. This was my intention since MythCon. Since MythCon, I have been trying to frame Karl in terms of his rape tweet and making that a big thing that people focus on. Why? Because we know about, white supremacy is out there. A lot of the other things that Karl's talked about are out there as well. But I think his comments on rape are quite unique. And they are quite jarring to outsiders, to normies. And they are visceral. When you hear the description, when a normie hears a man sent a tweet telling a woman that he wouldn't even rape her, and was followed by a bunch of his trolls going on and on and on about, would I even rape her? I wouldn't even rape her. People can go, this is disgusting, because you know what? People find rape disgusting and horrible. That's why it's so difficult to joke to write a joke about rape. Because, you could, in theory, joke about anything if you set it up correctly, but there is a reason why, people don't really joke about rape and get away with it if they do it really badly, if it's at the expense of victims. It's because we have a natural sympathy with people who have been sexually violated. But Karl doesn't. And that's why the rape tweet is, I think, it's a very visceral connection to have to a face. If you look at Karl's face and you think, oh yeah, he's the rape tweet guy, that colors everything else that comes after. So in terms of ease of understanding, a soundbite, media coverage, everything else, the rape tweet label is very useful in a mass media culture. The first introduction to Karl is about his rape tweet and him saying, if she's going to be a giant B, I'm going to be a giant D. All of that is now his calling card. When we come to the other things, his racist comments, his pro-fascist comments, everything else, now all of that will be looked at in the light of his already preset, perception people will have him as a rape tweet guy. So it's the rape tweet guy who said he would never hire feminists. It's the rape tweet guy who thinks that fascists have a cool factor, right? So I think now the media, I hope, will start exploring and unpacking more of his comments. I think Kevin and I have demonstrated with, beyond a shadow of doubt, he's operating an ban evasion account on Twitter, which a candidate for office definitely should not be doing. And that account itself has a bunch of terrible, awful things that he said recently. that could be the basis of entire other exposés. So we're just getting started. We are just getting started with this. Karl wants to be in the public eye. Then he has to also accept the scrutiny and the criticisms that come with being in the public eye. And I have criticisms. In fact, the line forms behind me. Like I might be in line already with other people who have criticisms. So this is not going to stop. I'm going to continue to curate this content. I'm going to continue to put out there comments he's made and critiques of his stuff. And there have been 2 really good articles that I want to promote. Before I do that, let me just say, I started a real divergent point, because I remember the Cognitive Society post about it, but I did start watching the Jack Peterson thing last night. I was supposed to be gaming with V on his channel. And I was saying to Kevin when 2 weeks ago, not this last Saturday, but the Saturday before, we were supposed to be gaming, and V was like, I can't game tonight. I have to clean up a bunch of stuff in my Discord. I'm like, V, come on, you're the one who organized this. We're only going to play for a couple hours. You can clean up your Discord afterwards. Well, then the story came out about all of the white supremacists and the people wanting to kill politicians in the Discord. I'm like, oh, that's why you were wanting to clean up your Discord on the Saturday night, V. Oh, I get it now. He played last week anyway. And this week he canceled again, saying he had stuff to do in real life. I don't know if that was more Karl drama, or if that was something else, like it was real life stuff, or if this is Karl just having a conniption because he found out, someone else has found out someone on him. But anyway, so I didn't end up gaming last night. So I watched the Jack Peterson thing, and I started a thread on it. Whoa, okay. Now I've seen Jack in person once before. He was speaking at Birkbeck College in London. He had, at least a decade or so ago. It's been a while. I'm old. He has he had an association with the law school. Sorry, I spilled some coffee, so I'm tidying up as I'm talking. And he came to, I don't know if he does still, to Birkbeck once a year to give like give 3 days worth of lectures, and any staff or student could sign up if you were, got in early enough, if you were, first come, first serve, open to the public kind of thing. And I was like, I'm going to see Jack in my lifetime if I have the chance. Why not? I mean, you kind of have to be a real nerd to be like, oh, well, I saw Jack in person, but I'm a nerd. I knew, his style of speaking and everything else, but in terms of the debate, I couldn't sit through 30 minutes of Jordan Peterson, so I skipped right to the Zizek bit. And when you're doing a Zizek summary, that is hard work. Super hard work, because unlike Jordan Peterson, who pretty much just says the same thing in different ways over and over and over again, Zizek's every line is got, usually, and from what I can see, it's there for a reason. He's an academic writer in that way. And so if I'm having a normal conversation, there's a lot of fluff in what I say. There's a lot of unnecessary words. There's little tangents. There are things that are irrelevant. There are things that you don't realize are important because maybe I've said them but not made them. So yet when Zizek reads from something in a debate format, he's been very deliberate about why every word is there in that sentence, how it builds on something else. So I have a lot of time for Zizek. I don't always agree with Zizek. I definitely do not always agree with Zizek. But with Zizek, here's what I like about him. He thinks about things in, I think, very unique ways. He will take something like charity and build on the notion of Oscar Wilde's notion that, of charity, never solving the problems of capitalism that capitalism produces. So you can't solve the problems of capitalism with the wealth that capitalism produces, because it's a system itself that is the problem. And looking at charity as basically a complicit way of perpetuating the suffering of capitalism. And I like that. In that case, I would agree, but I just find his thinking comes at stuff sideways. And I like that because it's so easy to just repeat the same philosophical points over and over again, and he questions them. But then again, I don't always agree with his conclusions. He's got some, white dude syndrome, I think, going on. But anyway, I always find him entertaining. And I was doing this Twitter feed trying to summarize some of Zizek's points, and that's on Twitter. So I bookmarked it. I'll do after this to relax. I'll watch some Zizek before the concert tonight and try to summarize, my understanding. And this is it. My understanding of Zizek, what Zizek meant, is not necessarily what Zizek meant. Because he's working on a different plane, I think. All right, so I talked about that. Now I want to get back to the comments a little bit here, because this show is pretty much just me nattering on about stuff and interacting with the chat this week. Okay, so we go here. It's been 5 days without Karl tweeting on his stupid Band Invasion Twitter account. That's interesting, because I wonder now if he's not just going to sort of abandon that account and move on. I think, it could be the case that one, maybe he's on a 7 day, a 1 week suspension on that account. I know he had just come off of a suspension, literally like the day, within 24 hours or so before he got reported for his tweet to me, his rape tweet to me. It might, and if he was already on a suspension, and someone had told me that they had, they sent me a DM saying that they had also received a report about that account from earlier, like a couple weeks ago or whatever. That account might be on its last legs. It might be on a 1 week suspension at this point. We'll just keep an eye out for it. He might just be using the Karl UKIP account, despite the claims to the contrary. Because if you look at that account's interactions with Majid Nawaz, it's interacting with Majid as if it is Karl. It's booking an appointment to go on his radio show. So, again, Karl thinks the rules don't apply to him. He's really got a sense of white boy entitlement. Cognitive Society says, I agree with your take on Zizek's depth, but this was hindering in the debate. I found, but it could be wrong. Absolutely. I mean, I have to say that for all the twists and turns of Zizek's mind, when he got to the point, where I am in his opening, because, I have to listen to what he said, then I have to think about it and process it, then I have to, open up my Twitter and start to type out what I think he said, and then replay the last 30 seconds I just listened to make sure I'm not misrepresenting him. It takes me a long time to do this Zizek summary. But he gets off on this tangent about Hitler being a storyteller for the people of Germany before, after the First World War, in the build up to him taking power in the Second World War, because the German people lacked a national story and Hitler was a storyteller. I'm like, okay, but what does this have to do with happiness and communism and capitalism, which is the themes? And if there was going to be a critique of Zizek in the opening that I can see so far, because again I haven't finished it, is that instead of actually speaking to the question of happiness, capitalism, and communism, he did seem to be going on a tangent. I thought his points about happiness were interesting. I think his critique of happiness. So the question was like something, I don't know, was about happiness, communism, and capitalism and how they interact or relate or whatever. And Zizek did what is appropriate. I think it's very Zizek, which is to question the very foundations of the assumption that happiness is like a good that we should aspire to. What is happiness? Is happiness actually something that, it sounds like, if you say, oh, happiness is not good for society, that sounds dumb. But if you look at the pursuit of happiness and what is defined as happiness, if happiness is defined as your material collections, then that's kind of a messed up way to think about happiness in terms of what the point of it is. If it's just consumption, if happiness is consumption, why don't we just call it consumption? So anyway, that was good. Like, that's typical Zizek. When you get into a concept like happiness and say, is happiness even happiness? What is happiness? Should we be pursuing happiness? Should we redefine what our understanding of happiness is? But then he doesn't seem, at least not yet, right? He hasn't gone on to he did a little bit about capitalism in China and using the common, like, collective harmony as a basis for authoritarian rule while also having wild capitalist structures and stuff. And I'm hoping that by the end, and I'm looking in the comments, I'm not going to be too hopeful based on some of the things I'm seeing, is that he looks at the notion of happiness, looks at the structures of capitalism and how capitalism frames happiness, the structures of communism and how communism frames happiness, and whether or not either of these two things are really, proper modes of achieving those happinesses, or even if how they define happiness is something we want for our society. But we'll see. Dataport Doll says, I tried giving you my best reading on the Hitler storybook thing. Yeah. I saw that on Twitter, but my Twitter feed's been crazy lately, so I can't react to everything that's been going on, because I'm getting stuff about the rape tweets and everything else these days. But thank you, I did see it. 250 says, I'm glad to hear an actual academic found him hard to follow the past day. I've been feeling dumb. Oh, no, that's GShock is incredibly hard to follow. I have to work hard, to follow GShock. And part of that is, too, that he's operating from a philosophical perspective that I don't have the same access to. And that's why I said my reading of GShock, because when he's using certain words and phrases, he might be, for instance, using a phrase by Habermas that I don't know, or dropping in a little reference to Derrida that I didn't pick up on, or something else. I did notice that he brought in Dostoevsky. He brought in someone to critique Dostoevsky during his opening. I'm like, that's a Peterson burn. But yeah, there are academics for whom, when I sit down, I have to clear my mind and just listen and try to stay in the moment and try to follow the arguments. So don't feel bad about that. Even academics struggle when you have a really high level of thinking going on. So that's okay. It's also very different from listening to Jordan Peterson. How I listen to GShock and how I listen to Peterson are very, very different in terms of what I have to do mentally to stay involved. GShock's speech style is similar to Peterson's in that it's so convoluted you can project your own meaning onto it. I'm a little bit, I would saying, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, yeah, I can sort of see your point on that in that GShock's language might appear to be vague, but again, I think what GShock does is he uses language that's referring to other thinkers in his world. And if you're not in that world, it's kind of like, reading a comic. And if it's the first time reading the comic, there might be jokes in that comic that refer to other characters or previous plot lines, and you're just not going to get it because you haven't read the backstory, right? So I would probably be more charitable that GShock does think very deliberately about the words he uses, the words he chooses, and what he's trying to get across. Now, I think the and so on and so on and so on, I think those are just tics. I think those are sort of verbal for Zizek. I remember I had a professor who came from China. He did a 1-year fellowshipy thing at my university, and his verbal tic was "in a way." You can say "in a way" that the color blue in a way, in this story in a way. And I once sat there and I just sort of kept track of how many times he said that. I know it was at least over 100 in a 60-minute class because he was dropping them like every minute and a half. I think that and so on and so on and so on is just Zizek's verbal tic. It's not meant to say you can put stuff onto it. I think he's just saying, and you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Stuff like that. Dusty Smid did a thread of his play-by-play of some of the debate. It was interesting and amusing. Okay, I'll have to check that out. I will do that afterwards because I don't want Dusty's stuff to interfere or to influence mine. Someone is saying, oh yeah, he brought up Dostoevsky after Jordan Peterson brought him up. But Katsumi, if you look, he's reading from a script. So I don't think he was writing his opening out while Jordan Peterson was talking. I think that Zizek was very well aware of Peterson's love for Dostoevsky, and he put that into his opening deliberately to have somebody refute Dostoevsky. So he didn't just bring it up after Jordan Peterson brought it up in real time. I'm sure that he had done some research and had planned on that dispute or bringing up that refutation during his opening. Data Port Doll says, my favorite moment is still when Zizek brings up Christ's atheism on the cross and it just blows Peterson. Oh, don't tell me! No spoilers, you guys. No spoilers. I'm still in the opening. It's sometimes hard to tell what Zizek is saying because of his accent. I absolutely agree. And it's worth, listening to him, I think, a second time or a third time sometimes because, and when you're not watching him live, you can actually go back and do that. Listening to him live, you just gotta go, I don't know what that was, just keep going. I hope I catch the train and pick up on his meaning if I just keep listening to the words I do recognize. I'm not getting out of bed until you tell me to. Hurry up, I gotta pee. Get out of bed, Memento Mori. Go, just turn the sound up really loud or take your phone with you when you go. That's fine. Good analogy. Listening to Zizek is like listening to Dungeons and Dragons game when you don't know the D&D rules. Yeah, you can follow the story, but it will be framed in a very strange way. Correct. And that's one of the things I've learned from going through the academic process is, I would read an article on voter behavior, and I would get all of the, I'd get the introduction, I would get the background, I would get the theory, I would get the data. I could kind of understand the purpose of the methods, but then I would hit the results section and it was all coefficients and numbers. And at that point in my master's, I hadn't learned enough to be able to translate it. And I just hit a wall. It was really frustrating that I got to a certain point in every article and then I just stopped understanding it. And over time, I learned the statistical, method, theories and the rules and the conventions and everything else. And those sections were suddenly unlocked to me. Suddenly, all the information that was denied to me before was as plain as day. And now I don't even think about, interpreting coefficients or evaluating somebody's model. And I think that's also how you kind of have to think about Zizek. And there's certain things, Habermas, there are certain thinkers who are just on a different level. And they're on a different level because they've spent years of their lives mastering philosophical topics that from a wide range of people on a wide range of topics. And you just can't walk in with a high school degree or a college degree or even a PhD in a different field and feel like you're going to keep up. So the Cognitive Society says, once my video on Peterson versus Zizek is uploaded in 5 minutes, I'll tweet it at you. Yeah, it'll give you an overview of what Peterson said, but save you the time of listening to it. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for that. How much money do they make gigging like this? I don't know. I'm sure they made, Peterson is just a hack in it for the money. He's a mediocre academic. He's not a great thinker. I mean, I would also say I'm not a Zizek. I'm not a Peterson. I don't think I'm a brilliant academic. I think I'm a grinder. I think I make good contributions. But where was I going with this? I don't remember. Anyway, what WTF did I watch with that debate? Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. You should have watched Peterson's bit just to hear how badly he does. Yeah, I wanted to. So what I thought I would do with the Peterson debate is start with Zizek. Because if I started with Zizek and then went forward into the actual back and forth, that would kind of be my warm-up to tolerating Peterson. I don't have a big Peterson, I don't have a big, immunity to tolerating his BS built up yet. So I need to get that. And then I thought I would go back and maybe listening to his opening on, 1.5 speed to get through it, because he's kind of a slow talker. So I will watch the whole thing eventually. I find Zizek dense. Oh gosh, yeah. All right. So first, Katsumi says, yeah, it's worthy to watch Peterson too. How different and how strange a conversation it was. Yeah, I kind of predicted that. Also, you can definitely hear the fanboys in the audience. That was also a really weird thing. I've never quite seen, factions in an academic sort of setting like that, where you'd have. I mean, it just felt from the audience like there was two different groups of people applauding at different times, at least I haven't watched the whole thing yet, but it had kind of a weird, cult of personality vibe, because there are people who just, Zizek has his own following. I haven't had any problems with the Zizek people. I like the Peterson people, but, yes. So Data Port Doll says, I find Zizek dense. Like if I zone out, I get lost, but if I pay attention, yes, he seems rather straightforward. This is what I'm saying is you can't be anywhere but in the moment with Zizek. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be looking at your watch. You can barely be taking notes. You have to just sit and pay attention to his words exclusively and then try to just keep up with his line of reasoning. Because he has these little logical bits that he takes you on. Kind of sets something up and he gives you some justification and he sets something up here and then he comes to a premise. What I find complicated about Zizek, I mean, it's just, like, look at some of the tweets that I have on that thread, trying to distill his words down. They're so densely packed in the tweet. There's so much stuff in the tweet, and that's based on his comments, which are based on more complicated thoughts. So, yeah. It is a unique experience to listen to somebody talk at that level. And all you can do is listen and try to keep up. Peterson on Fast Forward, won't that be hard? Like Mega Kermit? I actually think it'd be more like Chipmunk Kermit. Peterson, much of reached saturation level by now, fingers crossed. Mediocre is an understatement in all honesty. Fair enough. Peterson thinks Marxists thinks the world would be a utopia if we killed all the capitalists. Well, no one ever said he understood Marx or even accurately represented him. There's a reason why we still use Marxist theories today. And that's because he, even so, I think more so, or maybe I guess I'm not in the world of economics, so I can't judge the theorists, but it seems to me that outside of Adam Smith, in terms of the formation of capitalism and its development, there's no more important thinker in capitalist economic theory than Marx. You can't get away from his ideas because they're so, it's like gravity. There are certain laws to capitalism that Marx identified. Now, of course, it's outdated because it was based on an industrial revolution version of capitalism. And what he didn't expect was the way that capitalism itself would adapt to increasing encroachment by government to preserve its power and basically like do the minimal necessary to keep going. So we have labor laws, we have worker safety, we have workers' compensation, we have, less and less, obviously, in the 20th century in terms of labor rights. But anyway, the idea of, the bourgeoisie, the proletariat, the structure of capitalism, all of that, you can't say Marx is wrong. You might not like sort of the implications and the conclusions he draws, but you can't argue that his observation of those power structures was anything but spot on. So we will never stop talking about Marx any more than we'll stop talking about gravity, because as long as capitalism functions as it currently does, he was the first person to point this out, in a very systematic way. So anyway, let's see what you guys have. Oh, here. Watch some reactions. Sorry, I saw a comment saying was Kermit versus Daffy Duck. That's okay. I can get that. HK, that's mean but funny. Because Zizek does have that speech impediment, which I find his S's. Or you could actually Daffy Duck or who is the guy? The cat, Sylvester. The cat. Yeah, that's mean but true. It's kind of funny. But what I find more distracting is like his visual tics, less so than his verbal tics, so that's one for me. I know jack shit about Marxism and I could tell he was misrepresenting it. Well, yeah, I guess I'll have to watch the whole thing with Peterson. Alright. What were you saying, James, that you misspelled? Of course, reactionary YouTube reckons Peterson. One, he's closer to them than he wants people to believe. That's true. Yeah, don't worry about it. I make typos on Twitter all the time. There's nothing worse than like thinking that you've like I just wrote this tweet and it's perfect, and then you hit send and then you go back when someone likes it, you're like, how did I miss that word? No, why did I not see that before I hit send? The shame of my typos on Twitter. Right. Peterson thinks postmodernism is Marxist. That's how little he knows about it. Yeah, and let me just explain why James is right about saying that Peterson thinking Marx is postmodern is wrong. Marxism is classic modernism. If we define modernism in this case by saying the grand narrative of history, look back at the world, of big systems, of the very simplistic things, right? And Marx is definitely modern, because he is looking at this universal truth of capitalism. It's global. It goes everywhere. It's universally acceptable, or not applicable, not acceptable, applicable. Whereas postmodernism unpacks that idea of a massive grand narrative and says things are more complicated, and let's decompose this into its parts and look at how norms and it starts to break down all of those systems. And Marx's notion of capitalism is that kind of universal system on par with like a religious system. And when postmodernism starts to unpack and question the truths upon which religious assumptions are made, and also question things upon which, like Marxist critique, could be made in post-Marx, that's postmodernism. So he's calling a system a clearly modern way of thinking, postmodernism. And this just demonstrates he doesn't have either an accurate understanding of modernism or postmodernism, or he's deliberately misrepresenting Marxism as postmodernism in order to fit it into his worldview, which is wrong. How do they celebrate Easter in Germany? I don't know, because when I'm an atheist, and I've heard church bells. I'm sure there are church services going on. I don't know how well attended they are. I've never visited a church on Easter. The shops are closed, but it's also Sunday. The shops are always closed on a Sunday. And today, there's blue skies. The birds are singing. I've cut the window. You mean open the window? I don't know if birds are singing right now, but it is literally a gorgeous... You see in the reflection of how all that being blown out now, that's all sun. So that's blue skies. You guys can see. That was it. All right, I'm feeling like it's about the end of the hour. What time do we got? Oh, we even went over. All right. Yeah, guys, thanks for this. I know that we didn't do any PragerU, but honestly, I've been going through Karl's content for the last couple days, and I just didn't have a PragerU critique in me. But I didn't want to leave you guys without a Sunday Easter hangout. I am off now. I'm leaving to go to London from Tuesday until till May Day, although I'll be working. Therefore, I'm not sure if I do a hangout on Sunday, it will probably be an abbreviated one like this, because I'll be doing it from my friend's house, and they have a baby. And as much as I love you guys, if I have time to play with the baby while I'm there, I'll probably do that. But for the moment, let's plan on seeing each other again next Sunday. I will probably be in Dundee, Scotland at the time, but that'll be all right. And next time and after that, we'll have a regular Sunday meeting. So thank you guys for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Hope you found this entertaining. Go have a wonderful day wherever you are now, or an afternoon or an evening. I will also let you know how the Token concert went, and go check out Tech9's new album. You will not regret it. All right. Until next time, you guys, I've been Christy. You've been awesome. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and we'll see each other again really soon. Bye-bye.